Well, hello there. Looks like we're going to do this kind of virtually, if you will. So, my name is Kevin Furman. If this is the first time you've kind of seen what this is all about, I'm going to be hosting a book of the month, and we're going to be doing a lot of what a lot of people call self help books. And these kind of books are ones that I have read all my adult life and have enjoyed benefits of learning from the concepts and trying again and again to implement the great ones into my life. So this month, July, we're going to be talking about the magic of thinking big. And uh, let's see. So I'm going to just dive in really, but right before that, I did want to reiterate this is kind of under the umbrella of what I call E3 leadership training and coaching. And so it's what I do. Um, it's sort of my umbrella for how I approach training people to be better leaders and coaching people on getting them unstuck, moving them forward, however they want to kind of view that kind of situation. So that's the thing. The E3, really quick, is the three E's that I really think about are effective with people, encouraging, or sorry, effective with people, efficient with things, and encouraging with myself. I recently had a big conversation about encouraging with myself with someone, and it's become more prominent. So I apologize. Anyway, so you can think of that as like encouraging is sort of the foundation, and the other two are built upon that foundation. So we're going to go through books that are going to go in the order that I spoke them, though. So we're going to talk about being effective with people. And so Magic of Thinking Big has a lot of things in it, but mostly it's about being effective with people. So that's so again, let's dive in. So if you were to look at the book, and I've got an old copy, you can kind of see it's ripped up and dog-eared, and I've got some highlights in here, um, and all that. I'm not going to show you all those. That's not all important, other than I've used it a lot. I've read this book many, many times. It's actually been a while since I dived into it recently, so it's nice to revisit it because there's a few things in here that I'd forgotten, and they reminded me of some things that I worked through, or hey, I still need to brush up on. So the first thing that struck me was just even the preface there was a great quote. It came up. Let's see. It says success doesn't demand a price, which I thought was an odd statement at first because I've always heard everything is it's going to cost you something, and if you don't go for your dreams, that costs you your dreams and your happiness, right? So it was strange to hear him say that, but he said every step forward pays a dividend. So what he's talking about is it doesn't cost you anything, it's an investment. So it struck my mind when I reread it again and thought, I'd forgotten that one. And then the other thing about it, he has a little section before it actually begins called "What This Book Will Do for You," which is interesting. It was kind of an organized way to say, hey, if you're looking for something real specific, here's where you find it on this page. So if you go back, it's kind of a reference. So if you're looking for something like, well, how do I think bigger, or how do I harness being confident, so you can go through and just read those pages as opposed to reading the whole book. So it was interesting. I thought that was an interesting thing, and if I venture into the book writing phase of my life, then may do something similar. I may not, I don't know. It just was a great idea, I thought. So chapter one. So let's talk about chapter one. All right, so chapter is called "Believe You Can Succeed and You Will." And what's interesting, two things about that strike me is, if you believe, you can do it, and which is true. And yet, I think for some people, they see that as kind of Pollyannish, like, well, I just need to believe, and then it's going to show up. And what David does a real good job is saying, well, it's got to start with belief, and then you got to take action, right? So if you don't believe, then the figuring out how you're going to do something probably isn't going to happen. But if you believe, the how to shows up. And he kind of says it that way. The how to always comes with someone with belief. And again, having that kind of confidence that, okay, if I believe it and I truly, truly desire to have it, my brain will create scenarios to figure out a way to make it happen. And I can say to some degree, I really have experienced this. One of which was well, actually, the room that you're looking at, this is a kind of an example of that, where I was I was trying to figure out ways to make room's more fun, interesting, more of a reflection of kind of who I am as opposed to just another room, another house. And nothing wrong with that. I wanted my space to reflect what I think about life and or who I am, so people when they're here they can get a picture of it rather quickly. They don't have to guess at what it is. And as you can see, this hints at the American theme. um, and I'll just say, even with all of its problems, and we have plenty in this country, especially this is 2020, we've gone through some crazy times recently. Even with all of that, the ideal of what America was founded on, not the people, but the ideals of it, were inspired and still hold true. And I still believe they are the best hope for our world. That people are free to be who they are and create what they want to create and be of service to others. And that is kind of the highest form of expression, if you will, in terms of society. And it also comes with some responsibility. That's the other side of freedom. Is you have a responsibility to not infringe upon other people's freedom. You don't have the freedom to do that, right? We have rights, but we don't have the right to infringe on others' rights. And that kind of system, that way of thinking, was brand new in the history of the entire world up to that point. And quickly became a very big symbol of what humans can achieve and all that. Anyway, so this room was just a way, for me to say, yeah, I am patriotic. I do think the ideals of America are great. I think we have tons of problems we got to sort out, and I think we need to have some honest conversations about how to sort them out. But I still believe in the ideals. So that's an example of, I had this thought of, like, I want something, and that's what came up, and I said, okay, well, how would I do that? And so it turned into what you're seeing. um anyway, sorry, that was a little bit too long, but it came with, I believe I can create something interesting. And the idea came to mind. So okay, well, let's go for it. And then it was just follow through with the idea and make it happen. So once the belief was there, it was easy to step in and say, well, I guess I'd need stripes and I would need a blue wall, which you can't see right now. And it fit really well with the other color schemes I've got going on in the house, so it ties it all together. So that's a really silly small example, but it is a good example of the belief that I could come up with something came first. It wasn't just somebody said you should do that and I did it. It was, I want to come up with something, I did, and then the how to make that come to life showed up, and then I followed through. So that's the one thing out of chapter 1 is that I just want to take away from this, because I don't want to take any more of your time. I told too long a story there, but um I think it's good to remember that you do have to believe first before the how is really going to crystallize for you. And you can be doing a lot of activity, and you can be very busy with your life and doing what you're supposed to be doing. But if you don't really believe in what you're doing, it's not going to bring you the sense of satisfaction and joy that you probably are looking for. And if it does, fantastic, right? Maybe they're tied and you just kind of forgot what the belief was at the beginning, or the dream of it, or the goal of it at the beginning. You kind of forgot that part. You're just kind of doing it kind of out of habit. So it could be that way. For a lot of people I've met, it's not that way. So believing in something bigger is definitely a good way to kind of move forward and have a little bit more in your life. So the rest of the chapter kind of goes along with that, but a lot of it's just tell yourself, think about success, don't think about failure, right? Don't focus on failure, focus on being successful. What do successful people do? Ask them, right? Study them. If you can't ask them, study them, listen to them. There's ebooks everywhere, right? So you can study people and what they've done and how they've done it very easily these days. So I say go for it, right? All right, so there's chapter 1. All right, so that's kind of the long overview of chapter 1. All right, so chapter 2, it says cure yourself of excusitis, the failure disease. So he does a really good job. He goes to there are 4 main excuses that people give to not be successful, or to not go for what they want, and to settle for mediocre, settle for average. And even when I say something like that, like settling for average, it just kind of hurts, right? I don't want to be average. Nothing wrong with average, because Most people are average, right? Generally speaking, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm driven to be a, more than average. I don't want to just kind of be like everyone else. I want to be a full expression of me, and that may or may not be average in some category, but I don't want to, kind of go at it like, well, I'll just be average, right? That doesn't take a lot of effort. It doesn't take a lot of stretching yourself. Doesn't cause you to be a better person. You can just go about your day and right, and there's nothing. Again, I'm not really saying that's wrong. I am driven to be more than that. And I know I've met a ton of people that say the same. Unfortunately, they don't do the same. And I've failed at that lots of times in my life, but I certainly strive for it all the time. So the four main excuses that he goes through are health, intelligence, age, and luck. Which that last one I thought kind of interesting that he would point that as like one of the main fours, but I think he's right. And in all four of these, he steps through and says, okay, I've seen people say, I can't because of my health. I can't, well, I just, if I were smart enough, I'd be able to do that. I could go to college or whatever, right? Or I'm too young. I don't know enough yet. No one's going to, believe that I know what I'm talking about. Or, well, I'm too old now. It's too late now. I can't start a new career now, right? So I've heard people say those things, and the whole luck thing is interesting. I've never put a lot of stock in it personally, but I've met a lot of people that use that language, right? That say, "Oh man, they're so lucky." And people have told me that, like, "Oh, you're so lucky that you get to do what you do." And I say, "Thank you. Yes, I am." And internally, I think there's so much work to go into what I have done in my career, and I'm speaking mostly about my music career. I'm not talking about coaching and training right now. I'm actually going for my what I trained myself to do in college was be a musician, and so the hours and hours that I spent, I don't really consider that luck. I consider that a preparation and hard work, and if that means it that I'm lucky, okay, then I guess there's a little trick there. Do a lot of preparation and hard work, and then you get lucky. right, right. And the old adage of overnight success, it only takes about 10 years. So hey, um that's another one. So we get a chance to talk in person. You can ask me about that. So anyway, he does a really good job of each one of these saying, okay, here's what I see people do, and then here are the things you can do to stop it. Right. So like with health, stop talking about how you feel. When somebody asks you, say, I feel great. I feel fantastic. I'm having a great time. And you may or may not actually feel that at the moment, but it's really hard to create a synergistic relationship or friendship or start something new when you're just, I'm okay. And then you can just commiserate. I mean, that's fine. Misery loves company and all that. But is that how you really want to live your life, in misery? You know, like, I don't think I do. So, just talk about how things are good and avoid conversations about how, things are just bad. And also, if you do have a condition, consider it a blessing that medical science was helping you through it, or that you've persevered through it. If you're going through a tough time, that you've got the support that you have. um, and if you need more support, that you can reach out to people. There are resources out there. So it's more about being grateful for what you have rather than complaining about what you don't have, which kind of reminds me of a quote. It's usually it's not the things you think you are that hold you back. It's the things that you aren't that hold you back. And unfortunately, I can't remember who said that quote. It's great. But it holds a lot of truth in this realm, right? So you don't think about what you can't do with your health. Think about what you're able to do. There's plenty of examples of people that are paraplegics that have done great things, quadriplegics that have done great things. People are blind, deaf, all the classic examples that you want to pull up. That they persevered. They went. They just said, "I'm not going to hold that back. Let that hold me back. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to live my life." And yeah, I may not have an arm, or I may not be able to see, but I can contribute in other ways. I can do it this way. I'm unique because of it, as opposed to, oh, poor me, I can't because of it. It's a very healthy way to look at it. And then with intelligence, a lot of it was just stop comparing, right? It doesn't matter how much smarts you have. It's how much you work at your goals and dreams. And you may or may not need all those smarts to make a goal happen, right? So maybe even irrelevant at times. But usually we compare and usually give more credit to other people on their smarts, and we underplay or downvalue our own smarts. And so there's always this comparison, like, oh, they're so much smarter. When really, if you really sit down, that it's not that different, right? There are people that have challenges and all that, but taking an average, normal course of life, people are pretty much the same. They think what they think. They think the way they do because of their experiences, not because of their brain matter, right? So it's their experiences and how they were, uh, how they developed when they were growing up, that really dictates how they think. It's not so much how much gray matter they have; it's just how it was formed. The environment part can shape that quite a bit. And then the third one, age, he talks a lot about, well, I'm too young. Like, well, you've got a lot of time to get going. You can learn something really quick and you can move up the ladder faster. He talks about, that's one example. The other one about being too old is, people are productive now up into their 80s. And when he wrote the book, he was talking about maybe 70, but like from 20 to 80, that's 60 years. So if you're 50, right, you got 30 more years of productivity to have, right? So that's a long time. You can get something to happen. You can think, oh man, I wasted 30 years, didn't really get anything accomplished. Not true. But if you thought that, you can think, well, I'm only halfway. I, I, I could start over and do something completely different, right? Um, as I'm doing this training and coaching idea. This is new for me, right? So I'm jumping into this arena and very excited about it. I've been dabbling in it for years and really afraid to put my shingle out about it, mainly just because I felt I had to be the expert about everything. And that's not really how it works, right? So the training that I'm receiving is coaching is not really that. Coaching is a totally different thing. This isn't about that, but just, I had to rethink, saying, oh, I'm going to start over. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to stretch out, add a component, and uh, do something that, maybe, well, I would been great if I'd started when I was 25 and all that. But all the experiences up to now has got me to a point where I can say, now I'm ready, right? So you can look at it that way, like age. I'm in a certain age. I'm middle aged ish, so um, I can look at it like, well, everything I've learned up to this point got me here. Now I'm ready. I wouldn't have been ready 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. I'm ready now. Okay, let's make a difference now. Not worry about whether I should have done it before, right? And then the last one, luck, he just talks about how, just work hard. Luck is perceived. It's, life happens. There's a cause and effect to everything. Don't worry about whether some guy gets a corner office and you don't. That was one of the examples he gave. And actually a couple of different versions of that. And then, somebody else has a bigger car. Okay, that's that. They value a bigger car. If you don't value the car, you don't need to have that just to prove that you can. If that's something you need, great, then go get it, right? Figure it out, believe you can, and your brain will figure out how to make that happen, right? If you need to go back to school, like, well, I can't, I'm too old. I don't know. I've actually known a couple people that in their 70s went back to college, got a degree because they wanted to. They just wanted to finish. They had something started, they wanted to finish it, and they did. And I applaud that. Man, that speaks a lot more volumes than all of the other people that have said I can't, right? Somebody that just steps forward and says, "No, I'm going to go for it. I want this. I'm going to do it." Man, good for them, right? Good inspiration. All right, there's so chapter 2 is all about excuse-itis, and it's easy trap to fall into. He just does a really good job of saying, "Here's how you get out of these." And okay, which kind of puts in, well, moves into chapter 3. So chapter 3 is all about fear, right? So the actual title is Build Confidence and Destroy Fear. So he talks a lot more about fear first in here, and a couple things that one thing that stuck out is that he said fear is real. And the whole idea of telling people, oh, you're not afraid, don't be afraid. It's nothing. It's just in your mind. You don't have to worry about it. He likened that to when you go to a doctor on a health issue and you say, doctor, I got this pain. The doctor says, oh, it's all in your head. Don't worry about it. It's not really there. And you're thinking, uh, doc, it hurts or whatever. Right. So, So it's really, for him, it was fear is real, right? People are afraid. So it's not that you deny the fear. You feel the fear and do it anyway, right? You step forward in spite of the fear. You don't try to get rid of the fear. You can try to minimize it. You can try to, and he talks about that, like how to deal with the actual fear, which I'm going to get to in a second. But the main point at first was, like, you're going to feel afraid. That's real. Do it anyway, right? Step forward, right, with confidence. That will bring about confidence. If you act like you have confidence, it brings confidence, which is a point he makes in the chapter too. And then the other thing you talk about fear was, identify. What are you actually afraid of? Are you afraid of people laughing at you? Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of success? Are you whatever? What are you actually afraid of? If you isolate it, identify it, then you can take action to minimize it or get rid of it. You can really address it as opposed to just being afraid, like this. I'm afraid, so I have to stop everything. He's just like, no, I'm afraid of this. Okay, well, if I was afraid of that, maybe if I took these steps, I wouldn't be so afraid. Okay, yeah, great. So he does some really good examples in there. The other thing that is really interesting, he brought up an idea that I think I'd forgotten for quite a while. So I'm really glad I reread this book. And that chapter is the whole idea of how we're kind of afraid of making the same mistake, right? Repeating problems and all that. And the thing he brought up is your mind actually wants to forget things that are unpleasant. And even though we tend to ruminate too much on things that went wrong, if you think about things that were unpleasant, you don't necessarily want to remember them. You may, but you don't want to. And I think he has a good point. Our brain does want to kind of shut off the unpleasant. And so remember that, right? Remember that if it's unpleasant, it's okay. Move on, create a pleasant memory, move on to something that's productive. Um, and he talks, okay, then he gets into confidence. Like, well, how do you create confidence? So he gives you 5 ideas. He says, be a front seater, right? Sit up front, be active, engage, right? So be there. Don't just sit in the back and, wait for it to be over. Don't wait for life to be over in the back seat. Get in the front seat, be active, be part of what the action is. Practice eye contact. Like, really try to look in people's eyes without being staring and creepy, right? But just make eye contact and don't be afraid. Like, they're looking at you, you look at them. It's okay, right? They're, whatever's going on for them is whatever's going on for them. You just practice eye contact, and that will give you confidence. When you look away, you're like, well, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, everything's great. hmm it doesn't convey the same confidence level as just saying, yeah, I'm great, right? It's totally different, and that you feel that when you act that way. So it's not just, I don't know, it's just not just people that are confident do this, is that when you do that, you create confidence. And the more you do it, the more you create. I've learned that for sure. It took me a really long time to get rid of the eye contact, glancing down away from people, not trying to, impose my will on others, it was really, most of it came from just this lack of confidence in that I wasn't the expert again, something I mentioned. So what I learned is, the eye contact thing, it's not just to pretend that you're confident. It actually creates confidence in you. It did for me. All right, another idea he had was walk 25% faster. So wherever you're going, just pick up the pace a little bit. It conveys a message to other people around you that you're someone that's important. You got somewhere to be, and that you're not just mopey whatever person, right? You're on the move. You're going somewhere. You're actually trying to accomplish things in your life. And I definitely adopted this. Like, the first time I read the book, I said, "Okay, I'm in," and I've done that since. So yeah, I walk at a pretty brisk clip most of the time. And so when I'm with somebody, I'll slow it down. But I do. I tend to walk pretty fast and do things quickly. Which brings up, books in a couple months here. We're going to talk about being efficient with things. It has to do with that too. The fourth thing you talked about was when you're in a group or you have the chance, speak up, say something. Don't be afraid, right? Somebody else may have the same idea, but you're going to say it the way you say it. That's what's important, is that you speak and explain your thoughts to help clarify for yourself and it could help clarify for the whole room. I've seen that happen numerous times in training sessions where someone would ask a question and there were 3 or 4 people that would say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I was thinking about that too, but I didn't want to ask." And they did. And so it totally broke up in the conversation. It turned into something very important that we needed to talk about. And had no one asked the question, we probably wouldn't have gone down the road of, figuring out what was really going on. And it really helped forward the conversation and helped the group move forward quite a bit in a few cases in my brain right now I can think of. So speak up. It helps. And the last one he says is smile big. Use your teeth. Right, and all that. And so I had to work on that quite a bit. I haven't mastered that yet. I do smile. I smile quite a bit. I mean, I get my dimples and lots of laugh lines and crinkles in my face now because I do tend to smile more, and that's on purpose. I didn't grow up doing that. And you may or may not believe that. That's fine. But all of my childhood up until my 20s, I didn't really smile a lot. I was wrestling with all kinds of environmental demons, if you will. So it's been something that I just said, okay, well, if I'm gonna be happy, show it. Why not? Right? If it's a choice of trying to be confident, well, then smile. That's fine. And so it's more fun that way, by the way. It's not as fun to be mopey. It's just not. All right, last chapter. I'm going to go through this one fairly quick. He talks about thinking big, like actually getting into that. So the ways that you can start to think, like, how do I think big? How do I actually do that as opposed to what I normally do? So first thing he talked about was sit down and write down your top 5 assets, right? The top 5 things about you that make you great. Write them out, right? Could be that you're kind, could be that you're compassionate, caring, loving, good communicator, hard worker, right? All kinds of whatever, right? Whatever it could be, just write down, and you can write more than 5, right? And I would write down as many as you can. And these kind of get close to values also. You can write out what your values are in life. Like you value honesty, you value, I don't know, communication, etc., right? These can bleed over, right? And or it can be a good insight into, well, are you living these values, right? If these are values of yours, how are you doing with that, right? And so if you talk about your assets, if those line up with your values, man, that's a good thing, right? So that means you've been living true to yourself. Very positive. If they're not lining up a whole lot, it's time to evaluate, like, well, okay, maybe the value is not the same word, but it's related to this value. Okay, good, right? So generally we're doing what we think is important no matter what. And it just bleeds over into values and assets. So assets may or may not be your values, because you may be like a super hard worker, but you actually value more, time with friends and family. And so there's this, there can be this disparity there. um, so anyway, that's another conversation. Be happy to talk to you if you have any questions. You get a hold of me, right? By the way, my email, kfurman@furmanmusic.com. Right now I'll be setting up a coaching website, and I'll have an email for my coaching at some point soon here. But right now, we'll go with the music thing. All right. Anyway, so write down your top 5 assets and really think about them. Like really, find out. Now, another thing you could do is ask other people what they think about you. How do you show up in the world? Tell me some things that I do well, right? You don't have to go down the road of what I do bad. Just what do I do well? What are my top? Give me top 3 things that are good about me. Just ask a few people, right? Just to get some perspective. And if there's some commonalities, I think that's true then, right? All right. Next thing he says to think big is always be using positive words. And he cites a few categories, and it really boils down to use positive words about and to yourself. Okay. I'm continually working on that one. And then others. When you're talking to someone, use big positive words to compliment them. If they do something that you think is cool, tell them, right? And use really great acknowledging words and tell them, man, that is awesome that you love to garden. Man, it brings so much beauty in the world. That's awesome, right? You may hate gardening, but if they love it and it's cool to them, well, then tell them it's cool, right? Doesn't mean you have to like exactly the same thing, but if they are into it, then go for it, right? Also, when you talk about other people, right, you're just having a conversation about someone else, use positive words about them too. So you're just always being positive, always complimenting people. That's going to help everyone, kind of be on board with what's up. And you can think bigger about everything. When you start using derogatory things, it kind of collapses. Things start to get dark and dim. When you use positive and more positive words and complimentary words, it sort of opens everything up. It lightens up the conversation. It makes everybody feel more at ease. Just makes everything more fun. And then last thing he talks about, and I guess it's sort of not circular, but it seems sort of course he's going to say this, but to think big, you want to think about how things could be or how they can be in the future, not about how they are right now. So you may be in circumstance right now, you're just like, I hate that I'm in this job, or I don't know, pick whatever, right? Well, okay, what job do you want? Let's look at that. All right, let's discuss what that looks like. Now we can talk about, there's a gap. You're here, you want to be here, right? So how are we going to get there? And so that's the conversation that you can have with someone or yourself or whatever. In fact, I do a lot of that. That's the kind of coaching that I'm interested in. Is I'm here, I want to be somewhere else. How do I get there? What's stopping me? Great, let's talk about that, right? So that's a lot of what the E3 coaching thing is all about. All right. Anyway, so those are the first 4 chapters of Magic of Thinking Big. Sharing my thoughts on those. So I'm sure if you highlighted other things that were equally important, I just went through the things that struck me at this time through the book. So that's this week's, and we're gonna do it again next week. We're gonna sit down and go through chapters 5 through 8 is what we're gonna do. So next week, July 19th, 2020, we're doing chapters 5 through 8 of Magic of Thinking Big. See you there. Thanks. Bye.